I'm Scott Hamprick.
I'm Karl.
And I am Trent Jones.
And today on the Music and Ideas podcast, we're going to talk about Geroge Gershwin. And this is part one of a 14-part series.
It should be. He lived 37 years. I have a biography that I picked up from thrift books not from Jeff Bezos. It's Howard Pollack's Geroge Gershwin, His Life and His Work. And my gosh, I got through 200 pages of it. It is 877 pages, I think, for a 37-year life.
Wow.
Was he a military general?
No, just a musician.
Was he an inventor?
Nope. No, he was a song plugger.
1,000 pages.
Yeah.
Just a musician.
Just a musician. Yeah, he made beauty for other people.
What a concept.
He didn't lead armies across Europe. And it's just, gosh, the guy was busy. So the warning is, there's no way we can be complete on this in a 1.5 or 2 hour podcast, however long this takes. You ought to listen to Geroge Gershwin. You ought to listen to him every week. If you listen to Jimmy Rogers, if you listen to any of the other people we talked about, you just got to listen to Geroge Gershwin. So I think about the Jimmy Rogers show. That's American music. Well, this is also American music, but it's completely different. And if you want to know the music of this nation, you have to do Geroge Gershwin. Gosh, I've been listening to it for 4 weeks straight, and my kids are listening to it, and it's so good. Born in 1898, his family are Russian Jews, settled in New York. Their name was Gershowitz. His name was actually Jakob, I think, not George, but he Americanized it, so he was an assimilating person. But there's still that influence in the music. He lived from 1898 to 1937. 1937, he started having, what do you call it when you hallucinate with your smell? Olfactory hallucinations. Smelled burning rubber. And in those days, they thought it was all psychological. So his psychologist said, well, you need to relax or meditate or something.
Right,
but he had a
potty
brain
training,
tumor.
George. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oh, he was a lifter, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Really?
he had personal trainers and gym equipment, and he lifted. He needed to get his deadlift up.
Based.
Man of culture there.
Yeah. He took up photography at the end of his life. He was a painter. His paintings are great. You can look him up. So the guy's just... Scott likes to talk about IQs. What was Geroge Gershwin's IQ?
Oh, gosh. He's glow in the dark.
His musical IQ is off the charts, for sure.
Well, his parents bought him a piano. They bought Ira. So Ira is... We're not going to talk too much about Ira, probably. Ira wrote lyrics for most of Gershwin's songs. And they're charming. They're clever. Ira's pretty good, too. And they bought a piano for Ira. And George was 10 or 12 years old. And he just sat down and he started playing it. He already knew how to play. Well, how'd you learn how to play? Well, walking around town, he would go into the stores and they'd have a piano and he'd sit and he'd play. He already knew how to play the darn thing by the time they bought him one.
Yeah, he should have been in school, like sitting at a desk facing forward and looking at Miss Jenkins write shit on the chalkboard. That wandering around feral like that's no good. Like, who knows what kind of trouble? What could have happened to him?
Well, think how good he could have been if he had had a structured upbringing.
Yeah, right.
So, started as a song plugger,
What's
which
that?
is a song plugger. In the old days, if you wanted music in your house, you had to make it. You had to make it yourself. And so there'd be a whole lot of people with amateur level piano skill. Could sit down and plunk their way through a sonata or something. But you needed the music. And so sheet music was a big deal in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. Sheet music publishers. This is Tin Pan Alley.
Yeah.
Which is an actual alley. I've never been to it. If I ever go to New York, I'll just walk down Tin Pan Alley someday. If I ever go there again. And, well, you need to sell the songs. So the song plugger is the piano player that says, well, why don't you try this one, and starts playing the song. Oh, they don't like that one. Let's throw this one on. So you have to sight read.
Oh, so he worked at
play it.
So the song plugger worked at a music store.
Yeah.
Sheet music shop. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a human jukebox. It's like, yeah. You know, you get in the record store when they used to have those. You could take the CD or the record and put it on the player and listen in headphones. If you know,
record store. What's a record store? Is that like a weird Spotify link?
What if Spotify was an actual store? Except it's way better than Spotify. You could actually have people there that tell you, you know, hey, you like this and like this. Let me throw you a curveball. What about this?
Right.
Huh.
And it turns out to be your favorite thing. Serendipity is a wonderful thing that doesn't exist in Spotify. But yeah, can you imagine being a human jukebox playing all this stuff? Some of it was pretty challenging too.
Yeah, that's good training.
Oh, sure. This is probably the end of ragtime. Your left hand. I'm a terrible piano player. So we were chatting in a seminar last night, and one of the people enjoyed our podcast, and I thank him for that. But he said, "I really like when you play piano." I said, "Oh gosh, you don't understand. I don't play piano."
It's a musical calculator for Karl. He could push the buttons and get the values out.
Yeah, I'm not a piano player. My kids are all better than me, which I wanted them to be. But George is a piano player. And that left hand he has, for ragtime, you're doing huge jumps. You're doing the boom and the chick. Boom, chick, but it's an octave and a half, 2 octaves, and it's super fast, and you're doing interesting harmonic things with your left hand while you're playing a completely unrelated but very rhythmic part in the right hand.
Right. Yeah, it's unreal. Like when we get to some of his some of these recordings on your playlist, Karl, where he's just playing solo on the piano. Oh man, there's some cool stuff in there.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of Gershwin recordings. We ought to play some pretty soon, but there's not a lot of Gershwin recordings. It's the very beginning of the recorded music. There's a 1924 recording of Rhapsody in Blue. I think it's 9 minutes or so, with the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, where they're all huddled around some. I don't know what kind of microphones they had in 1924, but
it's a conch shell with a needle on one end that scratched a wax drum.
Yeah, it's a decent quality recording, actually, for the time. But a lot of the stuff that you'll get are piano rolls. So one of the things that he did was, piano rolls were a big deal back then. So you would have a player piano. A player piano would be a piano that would play, but you didn't play it. And so you get these big rolls of sheet music. It's exactly like, so I have a daughter that's worked a little bit with Reaper, playing around with it. And you have the time view where you see the events in the music that's all done digitally. Well, this is just that, but the digital, it's analog digitally. I mean, it's actually holes punched into paper.
Yeah.
That if you've ever if you ever tore up a little wind-up music box and saw that metal drum in there that has all those little pins on that drum that make the little music box make music. Well, the roll and the player piano was just like that, except instead of pins, it was holes.
I'm thinking you tore one up. Did you get in trouble?
Tore up lots of them. Yeah, you couldn't keep one. Hey, I wanted to play a little ragtime. You just dropped that like people know. Everybody knows The Entertainer. They know that from the movie The Sting. That movie probably kept ragtime alive insofar as it is. Let's go listen to just a chunk of that. It's Scott Joplin. And we all know this. It's boring now, but it was amazing at the time, right? Let's go listen to Maple Leaf Rag, which is more better. You can hear that busy left hand. I could listen to all this, but we're going to have a hard time keeping this under 14 hours.
No, it's very cool. And you can hear, so what's different about ragtime, which you're going to hear in Gershwin, is the rhythm is very important. It's got a groove to it. Can't help tapping your toes, but it's an angular rhythm that's not quite, it's not like 1 and 3 and 1 and 3. It's on offbeats, it's syncopated, it's groovy. And that, you're going to hear that a lot in Gershwin, except he's going to turn it up to 11.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about on previous shows the use of the triplet, right? Which is the feel that we would call threes, triplets, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and how you can create a lot of interesting textures rhythmically by choosing to place threes over fours, right? So most of this music, including ragtime, is in some division of 4, right? So it could be 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be a 4/4 measure, 4 counts of single beat. Or it could be a 2/4, 1, 2, 1, 2. And you create the syncopation that Karl was talking about by laying threes on top of that. So if I clap 1, 2, 3, 4, and then say the threes, you got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Well, that's not syncopated yet, but if you pick certain pieces of the 3 to play and certain pieces to rest on, all of a sudden you get some interesting syncopation. So da 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 da, right? And that's essentially what ragtime is doing by splitting the riffs, if you will, that are playing. One is playing in 4, one is playing in some subdivision of 3 between the left and the right hand. And you get this, it's like the hands are all, they're playing very independently, but they're playing against each other. You get these like little hiccups that you'll hear. That's syncopation.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why we like it so much. Maybe the anticipation, your brain fills in more of it, and so you
I think it's a surprise, and this is something that Gershwin does really well, is he keeps you on your toes the whole time. You're never quite sure what's coming around the corner. And I think that's what syncopation does, is when you've got a straight beat, if you will, like we hear in R&B and contemporary rock and pop music, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Part of the satisfaction of it is the fact that the 1 creates the anticipation for the 2, which is that big snare drum. So we hear like kick drum, and then we have the snare drum hit, and then kick drum, then snare drum. But it's very predictable. It's hypnotic, but it doesn't really, you know exactly what's coming. So it's kind of like a whole bunch of, sugar.
Yeah.
The syncopation is like, it's a little bit of a weird flavor thrown in there.
After my month and a half of Gershwin, the other stuff just seems, to me, it's a little thin right now. It's a little boring. It's like, even Cole Porter or something. It's all right, but it's not Gershwin. It's not just the syncopation too. You're going to hear. We didn't talk about influences. There's this myth about Gershwin that he's this untutored, unschooled rube who comes on the scene and then attempts to make classical music. And then you have Rhapsody in Blue and Concerto in F and American in Paris, and there's another Rhapsody, and you think, like Europeans saying, "Ha ha! Look at this schmuck try to be a classical musician." No, he was in on the classical music from the beginning. And so when we talk about influence, the ragtime and the syncopation on the one hand, but the harmonic structure is very cool as well, and his influences there are immense. I put 2 things on the beginning of the Spotify list. What those are: when he was a kid, he remembered hearing these 2 songs. There's the Rubinstein and then the Dvorak Humoresque. He heard him standing out of store on a player piano, which we were talking about before, the player piano, which was how you got music. And so our recordings of Gershwin himself playing are usually piano rolls. But so he was in on classical music from the beginning. He loved it. He went to concerts. He kept a record until he was 20 of all the concerts he went to. It's a bunch of French stuff. He loved the French stuff. He loved Schoenberg, which I do not, but I can hear it in his music. The harmonic the untetheredness of the harmonicness. Like, what key is Rhapsody in Blue in? Nobody knows. It's in all of them.
Yeah, it's like trying to figure out the key to Sweet Home Alabama. Is it D or G?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, except there's about 12 of them in Rhapsody in Blue. But
yeah.
Ira said it's in the key of blue.
Yeah, we'll argue about that here in a minute.
And so I like Schoenberg as filtered through Gershwin.
Let's play a little bit of this Rubinstein melody in F major, Opus 3, number 1.
See, that sounds like Gershwin to me, just without the rhythm.
Yeah, this sounds like his standards. You know, can you imagine you're Ira and George and you're writing someone to watch over me or whatever, and you're like, yeah, we'll sell a few sheets of music here and it'll be great. And now they're standards. Like if you say the American Songbook and you say standards, it's these guys, it's Cole Porter, it's just. But this sounds like one of their standards.
Yeah, and Karl, you may know, but is this essentially like kind of a French style of piano playing? You know, very romantic.
No, this isn't French. Not yet. The French stuff is a little more experimental. It's Maurice Ravel, Claude Debussy, and Eric Satie, that sort of thing. It's a little more floating in its harmonies, and I think I have some Debussy. I don't know how to pronounce French, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to call him Debussy.
Right. I like
because
that.
I think that's an influence on Rhapsody in Blue too.
Yeah.
When we get to it.
George, play for me one of your French songs. Let's listen to Prelude to the Afternoon of the Faun by Claude Debussy, or however the hell you say it.
Now, it's hard to tell what key this is in.
Yeah, very chromatic.
And the harmonies have that. They also have a chromatic movement. I think if you hear this and you listen to Rhapsody in Blue, they're almost the same song. It's just one's by a Frenchman and one's by a cool American.
Yeah, it's a little more indulgent. It takes time to develop these themes.
Well, he's not American. He's not in a hurry. This is 10 minutes long, and I like it very much.
I mean, that's when you throw that in there.
Yeah. So I think this is super interesting. So we hear these kind of sweeping, orchestral, swelling sort of music that was an influence on Gershwin. And then we have to add the rhythm, like you said, Karl, to get Gershwin, right? So I think we need to listen to kind of put all the pieces together here, maybe a bit of Sweet and Lowdown, which is Gershwin playing the piano, and it's going to have more of that ragtime syncopated feel that we were talking about earlier. And you pull all these elements together, and you get Gershwin.
Sure. Yeah, we could do that. there's more influences for Rhapsody in Blue. So, if dear listener, keep Prelude to the Afternoon of the Faun in mind, and then we can throw in the Sweet and Lowdown, and then we can go back and hit this again.
Yeah.
Try to get you a sense of who this person is.
Chromatic. Syncopation.
You like the double time there?
Yep. Is this a piano roll?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you listen to the harmony, you can almost hear that. If you imagine the strings swelling up in the background, it's kind of there. It's just that you've imposed this now rhythm on top of that makes it swing and syncopate, and it adds some more movement to it instead of just kind of swelling and floating around in this sort of sea of strings and orchestral elements.
Now, I want to throw you back. So, Scott, can we go back to... he's in a different key.
Where am I going?
So that's Edvard Griegs in The Hall of the Mountain King. Now, if you go back in Sweet and Lowdown, he's quoting it.
Yeah.
My 9-year-old noticed this.
The dogfight there.
That's it.
Well, and that's the theme of the whole damn song, actually. Really. Yeah, it's clever. I'd never caught that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, clearly this guy is no schlump. He's a student of music.
So we talked Debussy. We've heard a little bit of that, and you want to hear a little of the Dvorak humoresque, Karl? Where do you want to go now?
Well, we could do that. Let's paint a picture. So the second big influence was this humoresque by Dvorak, played by Kim Dammy, I guess. You'll know it. We can play a little bit of it. And you get some of the lyrical, melodic stuff.
Yeah, so this music is, and I think all this music that we've listened to here, this Rubinstein, Dvorak, and Debussy, and then later Rhapsody in Blue, and definitely in American in Paris, are what I would call tone poems. I don't know if that's what everybody else would call that kind of music. It's evocative of a place, a time, a piece of art, a story, a scene, a landscape, something, right? Like Prelude to Afternoon of a Faun. He's right on. He's telling you what he's trying to do there. You know, Bach isn't that, right? You know, we know what that isn't, but all of these things all these songs, all these tunes are evocative of aesthetic and place and setting a scene and transporting you. And that's the thing I love most about Gershwin, and I can see where he gets it.
All right, so I want to trace out a few other things, okay? So, George Gershwin was not at all religious as far as anyone can tell, but he was Jewish. He played piano for the Yiddish theater, which I didn't even know there was such a thing. Mm-hmm. So Jews in New York would have a theater where they did shows in Yiddish. And if you listen to American stage music, certainly Gershwin's theater music, it might sound familiar. So This is Bruce Adler. Bruce Adler, you might know him. He sang the Arabian Nights song from Aladdin. He's a tenor. This is Dear Nickel, Mira Nickel, Joseph Rumshinsky. Now, Joseph Rumshinsky and Gershwin's father used to play pinochle together. And Gershwin would play piano in these theaters. So I don't know if he played this song, but he might have played this song. It's even funny if you don't know Yiddish.
Let's have a listen.
Jeder kennt mich, wenn man sieht mich, gibt mir na Geschrei. Fischl der Conductor, Fischl der Conductor.
It's the story. It's a train conductor. And he thinks the company gets too much money, so he's going to give a nickel to the company and a nickel to him.
Klingt nicht bei jeden Nickel, muss ich sagen, ein. Hab angesehen, die Company hat Nickel sehr Sache. Hab ich beschlossen, will sich mit sie teilen, gleich auf gleich. Fischer, Fischer, dir ein Nickel, oi, 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 mir ein Nickel, oi, 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 das ist ein Plan, versteht ihr doch? Dir ein Nickel, oi, 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 mir ein Nickel, oi, 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 chotschishili, chotschishilo.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's delightful and fun. And Yiddish is strange because I know enough German and English, and I feel like I should understand what he's saying. Like I'm 90% there.
Facial hair conductor? That's what I heard.
Official is the name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's not a conductor with a beard.
All right. So there's that influence. And then I want to do another thing before we get into Rhapsody. So I think there's definitely that influence, even though he worried, I think, there's some quotes in this book. He worried that some of the stuff actually sounded like if you play Summertime a certain way, it can sound a bit like one of the sadder tunes from Yiddish theater. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Karl, real quick. So one of the things we heard there in that tune was the use of the clarinet, and that's very central to Rhapsody in Blue, and that's not something we hear a lot of, at least in the classical music that we've listened to in this podcast to date.
Right.
It's kind of a supportive instrument. We don't hear it as a lead instrument, but it is
Well,
all over that. So is that a Jewish...
funny you should say that. So there's so many strings to pull on in this guy. There is a thing called klezmer music. I don't know that George ever played any of it, but he probably heard some. Klezmer music is an Eastern European, Jewish, popular music, underground music. It's like probably Jewish hipster music. And very characteristic of it is the centrality of the clarinet. Also, interestingly, very characteristic is the minor third. The blue note.
Yeah.
The blue note is huge in klezmer music.
And one of the things I'd say as well is that, it's an interesting because it's the clarinet is one of those instruments that you can bend, and that makes it a very versatile lead instrument or solo instrument. You can bend the pitch up and down as opposed to just moving linearly like you would on the piano, right?
So I have a sample on our playlist, number 10. This is modern klezmer music brought in by Wolfbeck, our friends at Wolfbeck,
Oh my God.
on their album The Beautiful Game.
Let's listen
So
to
you get a little taste of kind of the sound. But you can dig this up on your own. There's lots of playlists on Spotify of this stuff.
Wolfpack, their tune, The Sweet Science. Here we go.
You hear him bend the last note of every phrase there.
That's almost a blues scale.
Yeah. Big bend there.
Such an odd thing, isn't it?
It's such an evocative instrument, though. I mean, you can do so much with the clarinet. It's,
my brother played the clarinet. He couldn't do that stuff.
I mean, yeah, it is high level clarinet playing. It's difficult to bend a pitch on the clarinet. What little I know of reed instruments, I've never played one myself, but playing in bands with them, it's very difficult when you're learning how to play an instrument that uses a reed to vibrate, to make sound, to make it not squeak, at least not squeak on purpose. And those guys, being able to just manipulate the vibrations of that reed in order to take a pitch and move their hand across the air holes just to make the pitch move around. It's cool stuff.
Now, this is not all of the influences, of course. The kid was a musical vacuum cleaner. We could listen to a brief bit of St. Louis blues, W.C. Handy.
W.C. Handy playing a tango. I'm glad
So
they
you
got
see
some of that.
the blues was still kind of undeveloped at this time. It hadn't really taken on the 12-bar form, but you can see in St. Louis blues, you can see why the Jewish community of musicians in New York were so huge in the beginnings of jazz and American popular music, which, it comes from black music, comes from that, but it also comes from Jewish music. It's two things stuck together that find that they have things in common that they can do together. So it's just like this kid, his parents get off the boat and make a pretty good life for themselves, thrown into, at that time, probably the greatest city in the world, and just walks up and down the street and listens to everything and goes to classical music concerts and then goes up to Harlem and listens to stuff there. And this is like 5th century Athens to me. That you get this guy that shows up and just takes all of this and puts it together. I think we're probably ready to take a listen to Rhapsody in Blue, where you're going to hear all of these influences, but different, put in his way. Now, two little notes. The glissando on the clarinet was the clarinetist in the Paul Whiteman band decided to do that, and George really liked it.
And you mean by that glissando, that sliding upward of the pitch as he ascends the scale at the beginning of the
yes,
tune.
But you heard in the Sweet Science Wolfpack that way the clarinet is made to almost cry. Well, listen to the beginning of Rhapsody Blue and you're going to hear that, except it's not going to sound like klezmer music. It's going to sound like that multiplied by, W.C. Handy, multiplied by ragtime. It's all, and, well, we didn't even listen to Irving Berlin, multiplied by Irving Berlin. It's all stuck together and you end up with this Rhapsody that he wrote in a couple of months. I think he forgot that he had to do it, and then he saw that Paul Whiteman had put a concert poster advertising it. And Geroge Gershwin will be presenting a Rhapsody in Blue. Oh, crap, I got to finish that.
Let's go listen. very ragtime there.
That left hand with those unison melodies.
What the harmonies are parallel harmonies. That's where I hear Schoenberg. It's not really in a key.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many people were in the Paul Whitman Orchestra? 40 pieces? How many people were in this Paul Whitman Orchestra? 40 pieces? It was bigger than a big band, which would normally be maybe 12 to 19 people, something like that.
Yeah, he kept a bigger band than most. He was able to afford it.
Yeah, and this thing sounds like, I don't know, it's like a small ensemble arrangement, but for an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a clarinetist solo, a trumpet solo, a pianist solo, but there's all this full orchestral work behind it. Here we go. But this isn't what he actually wrote, is it?
No.
This is what he wrote. Here's him playing it in a mechanical recording on a piano roll. Yeah, what key is this?
I almost like it better, just piano.
The fact that it translates so well, listening to the orchestra first and then back to the piano, you don't feel like you're missing anything.
Yeah, so it was orchestrated by Ferdi Grofé, who was the orchestrator for the Paul Whitman Orchestra, who also did Grand Canyon Suite. He did something for the Notre Dame fight song too, I remember. Because George just didn't have time. There's a myth that he didn't know how to orchestrate. He didn't orchestrate any of his stuff. That's not true. He did. He just didn't do it for Rhapsody in Blue. He gave some general directions, and then Grofé finished it up.
Yeah, it's clearly amazing here. But, man, I grew up with the Leonard Bernstein recording. I think it's CBS Records, Bernstein with the New York Philharmonic playing Rhapsody in Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's always going to be for me, is that one. And it's not this, it's a little different, or a lot different.
Bernstein takes some cuts in there, and I think he messes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that recording too, but okay, so what is that thing, Rhapsody in Blue?
It's Rhapsody in Klezmer.
It's not a jazz piece. What is it? I think it's Afternoon of a Faun with blue notes in it and rhythm.
Yeah, if An American in Paris is about an American in Paris, Rhapsody in Blue, I think, is Gershwin in New York. I mean, I think it's a tone poem.
Now, what I really like, my favorite, I'm not sure if you can pluck it out of the... I like the melodies. When you get... makes me cry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people probably know this from the old like FedEx commercials and other little snippets here and there. But this is almost 16 minutes of roller coaster. I hope if you think you're familiar with it and you haven't listened to it all, that you go do that.
There's so much going on. Let me take an attempt to put it this way. You could take any one of these little melodies for these sort of sections that we pass through, and that could be the hallmark melody for a film score today. Like, just doing something orchestral and like a heroic sound, and then adding in that weird little chromatic thing. Just that little thing right there could be, you could build like an entire film score around that, with that being sort of your signature lick. But that's not it. That's not the signature lick for this song. It's like he's got all these incredible melodies, and yet he still tops all of it with the signature melody for Rhapsody in Blue, which is the dun 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 dun, right? Mm-hmm. It just blows me away. It's like I would have saved those if I was writing this. I'd be like, I can't put it in here. So that's its own tune. He's like, nah, it's
he had no shortage of ideas.
This guy to me is the greatest melodicist I've ever heard, and so I came to this music when you posted this playlist. What's that?
Big if true.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Karl, you posted this playlist, and I knew Rhapsody in Blue. I thought I knew American in Paris. I didn't know American in Paris. I had heard very little of this music, although I was a fan of the French composers that we mentioned earlier, and I knew that sort of reference, but I didn't know all this other stuff, and I'd not really listened very deeply to Gershwin at all. And I'm still just kind of like a wide-eyed, I can't believe what I'm hearing when I listen to this stuff.
Oh, that makes me happy.
It's so interesting. It's almost overwhelming to talk about because there's so much going on. I can't really process it all.
Yeah, if you don't know Gershwin and you're an American and you like music, you're either not American or you don't like music.
Yeah, or it's just too early for you. There's time. There's time to fix it.
Pull your head out of whatever it is you're listening to. What do people listen to today anyway?
I don't care.
And it's all, look, you can stream it. It's all free. And pull up a Gershwin playlist and just sit down and listen to it. We haven't gotten to any of the songs, but
I want to fight about this Michael Tilson Thomas recording you gave me versus the Bernstein one. Karl,
you don't like it?
I don't like it as well.
Well, I was trying to find one. I liked Yuzha Wang's YouTube actually better. I think she's pretty interesting.
So I had a copy of the 1959 recording of Bernstein conducting the New York Philharmonic. It's Columbia. I said it was CBS. It's not. It's Columbia. I had this, I don't know, forever. Listen to this.
It's such a good way to pull out of that melody.
God, it's perfect. Anyway, I just think that this orchestration here and the recording itself is just so much more lush, I think, Karl.
That's all right.
The other one sounds like a really good high school band fundraising recording.
Okay,
Sorry.
but Bernstein takes cuts in the music.
Where?
Well, I don't know. How long is this recording?
1627. It's longer than yours.
Maybe it's the later one where he takes cuts.
Yeah, this is the 59 one's the one I have.
Yeah, this has been the soundtrack of my house for a month and a half, and nobody's complained. It's been all Gershwin.
If they complained, they'd have to leave. Sorry, you're not my son anymore.
Yeah, so Gershwin is the ultimate genre bender. And, he somehow manages to mash all these genres together and sound like Gershwin at the end of the day, not just a bunch of genres all mashed together, right? He flows through these sections so seamlessly. I don't understand how he's doing it. It's magic to me, frankly.
Yeah.
How he just slides between these sections of this French romantic sweeping orchestral bits to these ragtime bits, and then to this weird chromatic, like it sounds like you're falling down a staircase. And it all just works. It all just works.
Yeah, and you know what? Rhapsody in Blue is not even my favorite of the orchestral works. For me, it's the I didn't put it on our list because it was too much. It's the Piano Concerto in F. For me, is better than this.
Also,
it's got more unity. One of the complaints you can make about Rhapsody in Blue, and this is Leonard Bernstein's complaint. It's not really a complaint, but that he doesn't think there's a logical progression to it.
That's Bernstein's problem, not Gershwin's.
Yeah, Gershwin didn't care.
Right.
It's a Rhapsody. But you could cut it. Leonard Bernstein thought you could cut it at one point, and there's no telling what's going to come next. There's no musical logic saying this will come next.
Yeah.
But you do have that in Concerto in F and American in Paris, and it's a little more structured.
Yeah, I used to buy cassette tapes in bargain bins when I was a kid, because you could like, even grocery stores would have like a big table with just weird cassette tapes on them for like $2 or $3 when I was a kid, and I would buy, I don't know, whatever interested me, whatever caught my eye, and most of it wasn't any good, but I found some good stuff there. And I remember buying a Gershwin compilation cassette, and it had Rhapsody in Blue, but I already had that Bernstein one I was just talking about, and on that compilation thing, I think they had cut it down to about 5.5 minutes. Because you can do that with the thing. I mean, it made me very, very angry. But you can do that with it, and that's why they love to use it for commercials and
it was the
traffic
United
montages
Airlines
and stuff
jingle.
like that.
Yeah, United Airlines bought the rights to it, and it was the jingle. And if you went through the terminal in the airport, you would hear little bits of it as you traveled down the walkway. Can we do Someone to Watch Over Me?
Yeah,
let's. Gerald.
We're gonna do an Ella show.
Oh yeah,
Ella is just. We were playing cards the other day with some friends. We play every Monday at 10:30 a.m. and we put on. We normally use Pandora, and we'll play whatever. And a friend said, "Who is the best singer? The best male American singer?" Well, I don't know. I don't know. Is it Sinatra? Like, I don't know. But then she said, "Who's the best female?" And everybody said Ella Fitzgerald immediately. Like, there's nobody else. Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter who loves singing, I put on Ella. Who's that? Who's that person? She perks up.
Yeah, she's perfect.
We've heard this song before by Sinatra. He did an early recording of this. And I think it was one of his very early recordings in the 30s, maybe.
Yeah, I want to do a little bit. So George and Ira worked together. Ira outlived George quite a bit, but he didn't do too much lyric work after that. These little poems. There's a saying old, says that love is blind. Still we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So I'm going to seek a certain lad I've had in mind. Looking everywhere, haven't found him yet. He's the big affair I cannot forget. Only man I ever think of with regret. I'd like to add his initial to my monogram. I love that bit. Tell me, where's the shepherd for this lost lamb? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be someone who'll watch over me. I'm a little lamb that's lost in the wood. I know I could always be good to someone who watch over me. There's all these repeated internal rhymes in there. It's a little bit of light poetry, and it's perfect. So George and Ira together is a big deal. Mm-hmm. The other thing about that is these songs usually have a verse and then a chorus or a refrain. If you can get recordings that have the verse, it's better. Lots of times people will just start in on, there's a somebody. They'll start there. You want the whole thing. Other bits to notice about this. The syncopated da-da-da-da-da repeats itself through the melody in different spots. So pay attention to that. Gosh, it's just so good. I'm going to shut up. Play it, Ella.
There's a saying old, says that love is blind. Still we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So I'm going to seek a certain lad I've had in mind. Looking everywhere, haven't found him yet. He's the big affair I cannot forget. Only man I ever think of with regret. I'd like to add his initial to my monogram.
I think that means get married.
Tell me, where is the shepherd for this lost lamb? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be someone who'll watch over me. I'm a little lamb who's lost in the wood. I know I could always be good to one who'll watch over me. Although he may not be the man some girls think of as handsome, to my heart he carries the key.
Did you catch the rhyme? Man some, handsome.
Won't you tell him please to put on some speed, follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to watch over me.
This is why recorded music is evil. Here's why.
Why?
Because we hear this recording and we listen to recorded music all the time and we're like, hey, that's pretty good. If you were actually in the room with her doing that, just you and her and that piano player, you might never be okay again. You know, it's so rare and special that when there's a recording and it's propagated and distributed so widely, it hides how special it is. And a lot of that, she's right up on a big diaphragm mic, and a lot of that is barely above a whisper. And if you ever had somebody do that like that in your ear, it'd wreck you. It'd be like a DMT trip. Like your consciousness would never be the same again.
What?
Having somebody sing to you like that in person would be like walking in on Helen in the bath or something,
This is one of the greatest vocals I've ever heard, ever. I mean, I think it trumps even what Sinatra pulled off.
Yes. Yeah, it does.
All right, I'm not going to fight.
I think so. And it's amazing to me because it's like this was done in 57, 59, late 50s. I don't think that we've ever gotten a better recorded vocal since then.
1950, I just looked it up.
Yeah,
1950. Wow.
She's something
incredible.
Now, I will add to Scott's thought about recorded music. I listen to it all the time, but get yourself enough skill to pluck out chords on something and sing it yourself. Make the music yourself.
See, that's another problem with the recording. So if you're a young lady who says, I want to work up someone to watch over me, and then you hear this, you're like, I quit. It's not fair.
Right. Well, I am a little more optimistic than you, Scott, in that this kind of stuff inspires me to go out and make the music.
Yeah.
I mean, to know that there's that beauty out there. Yeah. In the moment, I kind of just want to put it all down, but afterwards I'm inspired.
Yeah. When I got to meet Wynton Marsalis, I told him that he made me want to practice or quit.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's like,
right.
Man, you just got to live with your horn, which he does, but I don't have the time to do.
This show's supposed to be about Gershwin.
Yes.
But I think it's okay to be about Ella for a little bit, because this man with his brother wrote these things that let these artists that elevated these artists, and that's why they're called the standards or the Great American Songbook, because the grist is just so good.
I can read you some of these song titles. I've got the essential Gershwin. It's not the complete Gershwin that I got for my singing daughter. But Not For Me, Embraceable You, Fascinating Rhythm, Foggy Day. You know all these songs if you know American Songbook. How Long Has This Been Going On? That one kills me. I Can't Get Started. I got to sing that in front of a big band once. That was fun. And play the trumpet solo. That was like a highlight of my life. I Got Rhythm. It Ain't Necessarily So. I Got a Crush on You. Let's Call the Whole Thing Off. You say either, I say either. That one. Long Ago and Far Away, a little bit lesser known. I mean, I'm just to the L's here. These are all songs that if you are a singer who thinks you're actually a singer and not just an auto-tuned pop princess or something, you need to be able to sing these. If you can't sing these and make a creditable version, you don't have to be Ella Fitzgerald, but if you can't deliver a Gershwin song, you don't really have a lot of skill as a singer of popular music.
Yeah, so Ira George cranked out all of these songs between about, let's say, 1925 to 1935, approximately. That's kind of where the meat of it was. So this is where I shit on the Beatles. And then come 1965, we're told Lennon and McCartney is the best songwriting duo that's ever existed, and it's the pinnacle.
No,
I mean, it's a joke.
But they're not George and Ira.
No, but it's a psyop. Guys, this song, they come out in 1964 and 65. This music's only 30 years old, and you're supposed to just sweep it under the rug, and and here's what's new and next, and this is best. It's a joke.
Well, I would say we have to do a Beatles show at some time, just because it'll be funny. But some of the things that make the Beatles a cut above the standard stuff of that time is similar to what's in Gershwin. I mean, there is much more. For me, as a former jazz player, there's much more harmonic interest in a Gershwin tune than usual. So, Someone to Watch Over Me, The chords are fun. I don't have to be as good. I can let the harmony dictate a little bit more of what I can play. Whereas if it's just a more, so I'll just do the beginning of this. This is the harmony. It's just the first 4 measures. All right, so it's like E flat major 7, E flat 9, E flat 7, A flat major 7, C minor, F 7. So that's cool. That gives me something to work with rather than just hanging around on E flat for 4 measures.
So if you're Ella, the lyrical content gives you a story to work into. And then if you're a jazz musician, the standards are so beautiful in terms of their chord structure and the melody that they can work on them endlessly too.
Yeah, and you can actually play jazz over a Beatles tune.
Yeah, we hear people do it.
Yeah. The Beatles had great chords. Great chords. But yeah, I agree with you. It's so, I'll take it one step further. When we get to American in Paris, Gershwin anticipates rock and roll. So the Beatles, they cite Chuck Berry as a huge influence. Well, Gershwin anticipates Chuck Berry at the end of American Paris to a T. I mean, the 12-bar blues are there, the backbeat is there, the boogie, it's all there. 30 years before Chuck?
25,
It's really incredible. And it's almost, again, it's one of these, it's not a throwaway, but it's one of these things, it's just a little section in a 16-minute piece. It's you pull the thread. We talked about when we discussed folk music, you start tugging on the thread and you're like, oh wow, this goes so much deeper. Like this is Celtic music when you pull it all the way back to Europe. Well, this is the same thing. You look at all these popular American forms, you start pulling on the thread and they all go back to Gershwin.
And he did it better.
Yeah, he did.
For the most part.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go to next. I almost want to do another Ella song.
I do. I want to do I Got Rhythm because I want to kind of continue to drill down on this idea of the standard because we haven't really introduced that here. So he and his brother wrote this I Got Rhythm, and you guys know it. Let's play Ella again.
See, that right there sounds like Dvorak to me.
Days can be sunny with never a sigh. Don't need what money can buy. Birds in the trees sing their day full of song. Why shouldn't we sing along? I'm chipper all the day, happy with my lot. How do I get that way? Look at what I've got. I got rhythm, I got music, I got my man. Who could ask for anything more?
Well, there's the hook.
I got
So you guys know this one.
in green pa-
Now, this is the songbook. If you're worth a darn and you play jazz, you've got this one at any time. Somebody throws $1 in the fishbowl on top of the piano player's piano and asks for this, you've got it because it's part of the songbook. We've got Geroge Gershwin. I think this is a piano roll here, right? I Got Rhythm Variations.
I don't know which one I put on there. There's some orchestral versions of this as well.
Let's see here. Let's go listen to I Got Rhythm Variations so we get a little bit more, and then we'll get wacky. Yeah, not the piano roll. There's just so much for somebody who cares to play with here. It's just fun.
So the cool thing about I Got Rhythm for a Jazz Player, there's two things you must be able to play as a jazz player. You have to be able to play I've Got Rhythm changes, and you have to be able to play blues.
And then
the variations get weird.
this thing is in the songbook. It's a standard. Like Karl says, you got to be able to play it. Listen to Charlie Parker have a freak out.
Hold on a second. Let me show you why they need to do it. Why Charlie Parker wants to freak out on rhythm changes in particular. So in B flat, it's... So you get that melody. The bridge is very distinctive. So the melody's in B flat, and then the bridge is... It's just cycle of fourths, I think. So it's like D7, G7, C7, F7. That's a huge signpost saying, all right, go back to the A section. You'll hear it because it's such an abrupt change. The key goes up a major third, and you're going to need it. So if you listen to, we're going to do a song called Anthropology, which is Charlie Parker, and it's crazy and incredibly fast. I think it's Dizzy Gillespie with him. And when the piano and the bass hit that bridge, you can do whatever you want. When they hit the bridge, you're going to know where you are. Honestly, it's confusing sometimes because you have three A sections together in the song. As a player, like, where am I? I'm not really sure. Oh, bridge. It's incredibly fun to play rhythm changes. Now they go into solos. And then the bridge is going to come up. But that's just I've Got Rhythm.
Yep. Is this okay?
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. Did George get any royalties from this?
Right.
Well, that's one way, if you're going to sample another artist's thing, if you can make it unrecognizable to the casual listener, then there you go. And I guess Charlie Parker's way was speed it up about 150 beats per minute.
Well, if someday we'll do a Charlie Parker show.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that cycle of fourths bridge is very distinctive. You'll hear it all the time. Now I think it's trumpet. Oh, not yet. There it is.
Cocaine and Benzedrine's amazing.
I just looked it up. That tune is there's a few different sources here, but that tune, it's somewhere between 290 and 304 beats per minute, which is kind of like a hummingbird speed.
Yeah, Flight of the Bumblebee.
You can't see the beats
but
as they go by.
Yeah, you can do a little research on your own rhythm changes. There's a bunch of songs that are in it. Cottontail by Duke Ellington is one of them. There's a few Charlie Parker ones. They'll just do that. They'll take a popular song, take the chord changes, and do whatever they want on those changes. But the changes have to be interesting enough. And you can do it with Gershwin all the time, and especially with I Got Rhythm. There's more in the harmony for just his little pop tunes than most. They're interesting.
Yeah.
And just really good. I mean, that song is going to turn into an Ella show. How long has this been going on? That kills me.
Yeah.
Just
one thing I'll point about, and I'll leave it there about Ella, because I don't want to save it for another show, is that notice how little vocal acrobatics are in that song. There's a little run at the end of the first verse. She does a little ornamental thing there. But there's not much. She just, it's the harmony is there, like you said, Karl. So there's a really wonderful bed for her to sing, to pick good notes over. And it's really all about her phrasing and her diction, how clearly she enunciates and how she chooses to enunciate to hit the rhyme.
Do you mean that you could just, if a song's really good, you could just sing it?
You can just sing it. You don't have to go all Christina Aguilera on it.
Yeah, I know, but golly, you've got to be good to do that, though.
Yeah. You've got to be good to pull back enough. Yeah, it's almost a crutch.
Well, and you have to have really good pitch, and her pianissimo singing is perfect. We'll have an Ella show at some point.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful.
Her diction, everything.
Yeah, I think it just drives home the point, though, that someone like Ella needs the best backing music that you can get, and you need a Gershwin to supply that to you. Yeah, not anyone will do.
Maybe Ella's next. Yeah, if the meat's rotten, you need a lot of spices. If it's prime, maybe you don't even cook it; you just eat it. And she's prime. I want to play Duke Ellington Orchestra Cottontail. You brought this, Karl, to talk about in terms, I think, of I Got Rhythm, but let's hear just a little chunk. So you can hear those time changes.
That's Cat Anderson on the lead trumpet.
So you brought that, Karl, and it made me think about, Ellington contra Gershwin. And we're going to have to do an Ellington show, too. He wrote Mood Indigo and the Black and Tan Fantasy that I think are sort of this American New York City 1920s, 1930s sort of tone poem things, too. Mm-hmm. And I love them so much. And they're so good. I mean, as good as Mood Indigo is,
Rhapsody in Blue, Mood Indigo.
right?
Even the color themes.
Well, how about
Ellington was a Gershwin fan.
Had to have been Black and Tan Fantasy. I can't remember which one of these it is. I think it's Mood Indigo. Maybe I'm wrong. I remember. I think this is from the Ken Burns jazz documentary that he said that Mood Indigo was what he heard listening to the sounds of his city through the air shaft. He had an open window to an air shaft, and that's what it was. So now we're at American in Paris, in my mind. If we're talking about Ellington and Gershwin. I mean, that's what it is. It's an American in Paris.
Ellington's one of those people. So there's people who care about it will say, like, who's the greatest American composer? Ellington's a name that gets mentioned. I'm firmly in the Gershwin camp after my month and a half. But Aaron Copland's in the picture. I used to like Bernstein's music more than I do, just because I'm digging back in these other people and finding out they're better. But one of the things they do, let's take Brahms. Okay, Brahms is fantastic. Love Brahms. He's going to write a symphony that is in the symphony form, or a sonata that's in a sonata form. He's going to write it in the forms of European music. He's going to do very interesting things with it, and it's wonderful, but he's going to do it in the forms. And then you have these punks over in New York City, mostly New York. Ellington's I think he's from Washington, actually, Washington, D.C., but originally. was like, I'm going to do Harlem Air Shaft. I'm going to do what I hear through the air shaft in my building, or I'm going to do an American Walking Around in Paris. I'm going to do Rhapsody in Blue, and it has no structure, and I don't care. So in the one sense, it's kind of nihilist. It's like, I don't care about all your forms, but it's not so much so. This is why I don't like Schoenberg, because I can't grasp it. I can't get what he's trying to do. I can get what they're trying to do. They're smashing rules because they can, but they're not smashing rules only because they can. They're smashing rules because, like, I want to express this.
Well, yeah, it's not a deconstruction of it. It's you have to be, if you're going to break the rules, you have to be a master of the thing that you're trying to break.
Well, yes, and not only that, but they're trying to sell sheet music, and he's very influenced and conformed and controlled by the American stage. We haven't talked about Porgy and Bess and all of that too, but he's just not writing symphonies. I mean, it's not even the same animal,
Yeah.
And that's good. It's not even, see, this is what good art should be. It's not really a reaction to what had come before. It's not a tossing out of what came before. It's like, we have these new needs. We have sheet music sales so we can feed our children, and we've got Broadway now, and we have the new form, which is the American musical. And so he takes what he learned from those old guys, and now we have this.
Yeah. Well, so I was thinking to that point, Scott, could we have Looney Tunes without Gershwin? I mean, if you go listen to Karl Stalling, you mentioned him on the show a couple episodes ago. Karl Stalling, that scored all of those great old Looney Tunes episodes. I mean, he's pulling from all of these great composers again for a new, what at the time was a brand new medium. This crazy animated stuff. Like, we've got dialogue, and it's like little short movies, and we need a orchestral score. And but could that have come without Gershwin before? So yeah, it's so interesting.
Trent messaged me. He said, "Hey man, I know there's some Gershwin, Karl Stalling quotes. You go find some of those. We'll talk about them on the show." So I dug in, spent just a little bit of time researching that, and really interesting. Karl Stalling and a couple other guys invented the click track for recording, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he would sit down. They would say, Warner Brothers would say, "Okay, Karl, oh my gosh, I just forgot his name. So-and-so is going to direct a new Looney Tunes Merry Melodies cartoon." And Karl Stalling would go meet with him, and they would set out a click track right then at the meeting. And they would animate to the click track. So when the safe fell on Daffy Duck, it fell right on the beat. So Karl would know where to have hit the timpani or whatever the heck it was, And then of course he works for Warner Brothers, and most of the quotes in what Stalling called puns are puns and quotes on Warner Brothers sheet music. So we all know the Arkansas Traveler song. That's a Warner Brothers track, and we wouldn't know that if Stalling hadn't hammered down on those things. So I was looking through there trying to find Gershwin quotes because it seems like it's there. They didn't own his songbook.
Yeah.
So they ain't there.
Interesting. Although I was able to find there is a Looney Tunes short you can look up called Rhapsody in Rivets.
Yep.
That is very Gershwin-esque. He does not directly quote any of Rhapsody in Blue or anything, but it is clearly a Gershwin parody tribute where, orchestral music set to a conductor that's a contractor conducting a motley group of construction workers to drive rivets and hammer nails in time with the music.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, we should.
But yeah, so
we got to do it.
Yeah.
This is actually a Warner Brothers track that they owned. This is not the theme to Looney Tunes. This is a direct quote from a song that they had in their book. This is great pod. See. Okay, here
Listen
comes
to the syncopation.
Here comes the foreman. He rolls out the blueprints.
I don't think I've seen this one.
He's got a ruler on the trestle board. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what is this quote, Karl?
Oh, heck, I can't remember.
It's Hungarian Rhapsody?
Sounds like Dvorak.
Yeah. But we owe Karl Stalling a whole lot.
We do.
Yeah,
We do.
so many of us know. What we do know about this stuff comes from Bugs Bunny and Karl Stalling.
From cartoons, yeah.
Fritz Fraley.
Yeah,
From
you know,
good cartoons.
It's yeah, and it's interesting. We'll move on after this, but this intersection of art and commerce is so interesting because when we talk about an online great books, that one of the projects that we can do at home with our families, with our friends, with our reading groups is to keep the lights on when civilization turns as it does inevitably. And, you know, I'm awfully glad a whole bunch of monks in medieval Europe bothered to copy down Plato and Aristotle, et cetera, so that I can read it today, right? And it's the same thing. Like, thank you, Karl Stalling, for doing all this work and not just writing throwaway orchestral junk to throw in those cartoons, which would have worked, but he went above and beyond. He decided to write something that was challenging, that was interesting, and now we have a link back to those composers so we can discover them.
But it's not just a project of archaeology, because Trent, your reaction to Gershwin is exactly what I want everybody's reaction to be to these kind of shows. That here's something that it's not, hey, buddy, you know, we're living in some dystopian future or dystopian present. And you say, hey, buddy, come here. I got something for you. It's forbidden. And then you put on An American in Paris. Or How Long Has This Been Going On or something. I'm like, oh my goodness, where has this been hiding? It's not because it's old that you should listen to it. It's because it's wonderful.
It's ageless.
It's a gem. It's a treasure that you should know about. So we're not pushing culture because it's old and dead. We're pushing it because it's new and alive.
I don't know how many times y'all have heard this as seminar leaders in online great books. I've heard it a lot from my small group that I'm a part of. That's like, wow, I didn't realize how modern this reads. And this being a lot of stuff that we've read, the Greek tragedies. We're like, wow, this stuff actually reads, when you translate it to English, pretty dang modern. I know those characters. I recognize them. Mm-hmm. It's actually like this art is fresh even today, right? It's not, it doesn't age. Right?
There's these ideas that the medievals had, that there were things that were universal, transcendental qualities of being. True and good and beautiful are three of them. If something's true and good and beautiful, it's true and good and beautiful. And it doesn't matter if your culture has moved away from it, it's still good. And so you dig it up. You dig up Aeschylus, or you dig up Gershwin's songbook someday. Somebody finds it in a cave somewhere and starts playing it. I'm thinking of Rush songs right now. You know, My Uncle Has a Country Place and no one knows about it. And you go and you dig it out and you pull the sheet off and you say, and you start plucking it out. Dun, 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 dun. Well, this is interesting, you know? And you realize that there was glory there and that it's still there and you just need to look at it.
Yeah.
Speaking of glory, we need to go listen to An American in Paris before we enter hour 6.
Y'all stop teasing me. I've been waiting an hour and a half now to listen to this one. I wanted to do a show that was just this song.
Yeah.
Could
for
be
2 hours.
Columbia Symphony Orchestra. This is that Bernstein recording here. Let's go.
American just got off the plane. He's in Paris now. He's getting honked at.
He just walked past a burlesque house.
Yeah. He finally found his hotel. That first section reminds me of getting out the train in Gare du Nord and trying to figure out what the heck's going on. Just the energy of the city is overwhelming. You've never been to a big city like that.
Well, you'll hear it now after hearing An American Paris.
Yeah.
Right.
It's what cities sound like.
And now we've sat down at a nice cafe, maybe in Montmartre.
No, I think you've seen the girl.
I do too.
One of them French girls.
She's smoking.
Is she smoking and smoking?
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, how did Karl Stalling not study all of this intimately?
Yeah.
So this is 18 minutes and 22 seconds. And it's just vignette after vignette. And I don't know if anybody can listen to this without trying to imagine what's happening to this American who's in Paris. He has to have written it for that reason and for that purpose, right? He has to have. And if he didn't, what a wonderful mistake or accident.
I'm just waiting to get to the trumpet melody.
Right. Well, so we've got a couple of, if we want to kind of pause it here and just kind of digest a little bit. It's so interesting how, like, he's got so much going on, and yet he can tie it all together with one melody, you know, and it's this is like the Gershwin thing to me. It's just that one little motif is like the refrain that keeps you grounded in this whole thing. And yeah, it's kind of like that. Karl, it's I believe it's basically a movement between the root and the minor seventh and the major third, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that's the glue, but there's a bunch of themes. You could name them if you wanted to. Like there's that walking theme, and then kind of a burlesque theme. The theme we haven't gotten to yet. That one kills me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when I listen to this, I'm often trying to figure out which is Paris and which is the American. And I think that little theme you just played right there was the American. Who knows?
It's the American in Paris.
Right.
I think for me, that's the love theme. But, there's nothing in the score telling me what this should be. It says blues tempo. I have a piano reduction for it. It doesn't tell me that this is when he falls in love, but it's so. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about Wagner, as I often do, and so this is one of the things that happened in music. If you go back and listen to Baroque music, which I love, I think Baroque music is wonderful. Telemann and Bach and Handel. It is not a tone poem. It is passionate and wonderful, but it doesn't make you think of anything in particular. And that's kind of why I like it, because there's a freedom to think whatever I want. And then you get into the Romantic period, and you start to get a little more insistent on that. And you get in the theater, especially with Wagner, you get themes, leitmotifs that are attached to characters or emotions. There's a whole catalog of them for the Ring. This is Wagnerian in that way. There's these themes. It doesn't sound like Wagner at all, but there's themes that are recognizable that come back, that you can imagine there's characters meeting each other. And you talked about Karl Stalling, and modern film music always has that. And if you've watched those horrible Star Wars movies that I've heard about, every character has a theme.
Yeah. Da, 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 da. That's Leia.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
That's the best theme, by the way.
It is.
Gross.
So we got to get to my favorite.
Which is your favorite?
Da, 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 da.
Okay, let me see if I know where it is.
A couple more minutes in, maybe, from where we were. So there's our blue note.
Then some kind of bad guy. There's a movie that tries to set this to a ballet. Gene Kelly did a movie called An American in Paris. So if you want to see a dancer's take on this, you can watch the end sequence of An American in Paris.
Yeah, why would anybody want to see that?
So this is a long tune, but we heard there in that beautiful melody the introduction of a blue note. And here's where Gershwin got interesting for me, is it develops that later on. If we fast forward to roughly minute 13 in the song, we're going to hear not just blue notes, but actually a 12-bar blues form, which he would have been borrowing from the earlier ragtime stuff.
The strings.
Oh, God.
Goodness. In the orchestral writing, whenever he's got a melodic movement, there is always an answering, a response. There's a call and a response in the rest of the orchestra.
Yeah, we heard those French horns, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Counter melody kills me.
I want
Wonderful.
to get to Trent's chunk there at the end, but it's at the end. We're only 12 minutes into this 18-minute piece. I don't know what to make of this. I love it, but it's an American in Paris. So, an American. Paris. Gershwin's folks were straight off of the boat. He's probably the first Gershwin, or one of his siblings, to speak English. And the French gave us the Statue of Liberty, helped us pin Cornwallis in Yorktown. Mm-hmm. They have, both of us Americans and us French, have struggled with this whole, they're on their fourth republic, and I think we're wrapping up the first one. The whole darn thing is really interesting and evocative of something for me, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And I'm going to guess that Gershwin felt something, saw something there too. Being that his parents were immigrants from Eastern Europe, and then he had some money and had some fame. This could have been an American in London. It could have been one in Sao Paulo, but it's not. It's an American in Paris. And Paris, I've never been there, but it's a special place. Clearly, it could have been an American in Venice too, though, right? There's sort of a romantic aura around Venice. It's not. It's an American in Paris. I can give you a quote.
Let's see. So this is a shorter one from a radio show in 1934. This piece describes an American's visit to the gay and beautiful city of Paris. We see him sauntering down the Champs-Élysées, walking stick in hand, tilted straw hat, drinking in the sights and other things as well. We see the effect of the French wine, like that stumbling melody going into the trumpet melody, I think is that, which makes him homesick for America. And that's where the blues begins. The blues begin. He finally emerges from his stupor to realize once again that he's in the gay city of Paris, listening to the taxi horns, the noise of the boulevards, and the music of the can-can, and thinking, home is swell. But after all, this is Paris, so let's go.
Let's go.
He probably didn't say it quite like that.
My experience growing up in a suburb, I saw London first, before I visited Paris, but it's a strange thing growing up with pictures of all these buildings and places in books, and then later on the interwebs. You see the Notre Dame Cathedral or the Champs-Élysées in person, and it's kind of, at first it just doesn't register. It's kind of like no, that's like the thing in the book. Yeah, it's like it's always been a little picture that you see on your screen or in a book. And then you realize, no, this is the real thing. Like, this existed before all that. And it's a strange thing. I guess it's a connection to an older culture that we just don't have in a lot of places in the U.S. That's, there's nothing like that in DFW.
Well, I like that. I like in the song though. He seems like he's. So I went with some friends up to Quebec, and we knew. I mean, we made a point of mispronouncing everything and being loud Americans. I mean, Quebec's not Paris, but just being. I love that it's brash. It's, for me, this music is the 1920s. 1920s, a time of high prosperity and optimism and happiness in the country, even though there was prohibition. This is the jazz age. This is what it sounds like to me. A confidence. So, that Gershwin can come in and create a new American music, even though he's not just off the boat. His parents are just off the boat. Well, you could do that because at least in New York City, there was a sense that we're going places. Buildings are going up. What did New York look like in 1898 when he was born? What did it look like in 1937? Speaking of a rivet Rhapsody, think of all the things that went up while he was alive. The sky's the limit. Even though he got into the Depression, the sky's the limit. Everything looks. That's what music is. It's an optimistic, swaggering American feeling.
Yeah, the Empire State Building,
Chrysler Building,
built 1930, 1931. So literally, the sky was the limit.
Yeah,
at that point.
Flatiron Building, Chrysler Building, all the good ones, Rockefeller Center, all the good ones.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk American music, so American music, this is American music filtered through New York. It's honestly, it's a Black Jewish thing. This New York American music, all the composers, it's African American orchestra leaders, Black leaders, and Jewish songwriters smushed together, and you get that. There's different strains, like the Jimmy Rogers, the Appalachian, the Celtic stuff. That's another kind of American music. It's not this.
Right.
It's not this. And the stuff he listened to was like Porgy and Bess. Even that, the black music that he got is a different source. It's not New Orleans. It's not Delta blues. It's different. It's more coastal.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. I want to talk about this because I'm trying to trace this. So we get to the C section, if you will, in American in Paris, and we have a 12-bar blues form, and we have a shuffle kind of boogie sort of rhythm, but with a strong backbeat. And it's just there a little bit. The 12-bar blues, he's playing around with the 12-bar blues form, and then we get a little bit of this like, right? The exact same stuff we're going to hear in the 50s that, Chuck Berry plays over. And from what we did in the blues episode, at this period in time, 1928 or 29, when this comes out, we're not hearing that in Delta blues yet.
This stuff, Rhapsody in Blue, predates Louis Armstrong's West End Blues that we have talked about in here. Gershwin should get more credit for the development of the blues, I think, than he gets.
Yeah, that was a very interesting surprise in this song. Do we want to find that section and just kind of
would you say that? Is that C section? Would you say that he gives birth to an idea in this C section?
I would never say that.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can find that.
This orchestra doesn't swing, though.
The snare does not swing.
No.
It's kind the drums there at 13. I hear exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and it's just a little bit there. He's playing around with that 12-bar blues form, but we hear that actual, yeah.
The drums have a more of a locomotive feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
like it.
you can draw a parallel to that if you know, for those of you who might not be hearing it. So think about Chuck Berry, you know, when he's you know.
Yeah,
There you
it's a 12-bar blues. It's the melody is. It's kind of a. Chuck can't sing quite like that, but that's the melody over the top. But you could take that is just, it's just rock and roll. It's like,
And I like it.
And it's what I love it. It's a minute maybe in this whole piece. It's just kind of, it's almost a throwaway.
Yeah. But he just
Kinda
does
like, let's
that.
just play around with that a little.
He just does that. He just takes 8 hooks, any of which would be one good song, and he'll just put them in one tune. It's amazing.
Yeah.
yeah. Gosh, this has been, we're like 2 hours in. We haven't done anything.
No.
You know, the guy was busy. He died too young, who put out a whole lot of music. Go dig in.
It's a damn shame. Can you imagine if he'd have made it to 76 years old? You know, he would have been there when the Beatles got here. I mean, it would have been mid-60s. And of course, we would have gotten a lot more songs out of him, of course. But if you had a powerhouse like this, whose career continued, and he could have made it to the era of television and then broad radio so that he could continue to influence culture, I think, what would pop music be like today? Probably better. You know, we didn't just not get these songs that he could have written. We also didn't get his active voice reacting to pop culture, and that may be a bigger loss, you know?
Yeah. There's that famous quote, you know, I heard that George Gershwin died, but I don't have to believe it if I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, one of his friends said that, 1937, suddenly. And I was thinking, what if Russia hadn't kicked all these people out? What would Russian popular music have been?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. About the Beatles, Karl.
Yeah.
I don't actually hate the Beatles. I hate how overblown they are.
You hate the people that love the Beatles.
I don't even hate them. It's just too overblown. There's so much beautiful, wonderful stuff. You know, if you're looking for a good love tune, someone to watch over me, not love me do, or whatever, you know, it's just, everything is so overblown. And, you know, there are the things that I love so much that have been just subsumed under this wave of that, you know?
Yeah.
And that's
so
where my resentment comes from. I don't hate them that much. I hate their aura. I hate the shadow they've cast.
Well, so I don't watch much television, but I did years ago watch that show Mad Men about the advertising executives in New York in the 60s when culture was changing. That's the backdrop to all this, right? What these ad guys were doing in the early 60s versus the later 60s. I think they even maybe get to like 1970 or so at the end of the series. Really interesting. And it's just sort of the crass commercialization. You know, it's not like Gershwin wasn't trying to get paid. You know, he wasn't just sitting in an ivory tower writing music, but there's something that happened then in this mass market, you know, mass media market that was really driven and accelerated, I should say, by the marketing and advertising world that emerged in the 60s.
Well, I don't. This is old man complaining about the youth today, but these songs, the stuff that he did were huge hits, and they're hard to get into.
Yeah.
And so what that tells to me is that we are not the listeners for these songs right now. You know, we're not quite, this is part of the goal of the show for me, is to get people to to listen a bit better and find better music. Why would you write a song as complicated as how long has this been going on? Why would you write something like that when you can just write a little Ariana Grande piece? And it's not complicated at all, and everybody gets every single bit of calories out of that thing right away. They can digest it. It's like, it's pure glucose. You know, they can get it really quick. Whereas a Gershwin tune is a little harder. Like, what's going on here? And we have, that's what it bothers me, is culturally we've gone for the easy and shallow because it's quick. But it's not better. It can still be good, but it's just shallow.
Well, to extend my reference here, in Mad Men, one of the interesting things is all the children in the show are constantly, like, they're not ever directly parented. They're always like, hey, go watch TV. Go watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch TV. So the kids of the show, who would be the baby boomer generation today, were stuck in front of the TV in that show. And I don't think that was an accidental choice or an incidental choice by the writers of that show. I think they were making a commentary there. It was easy.
Starting in the mid 40s, I mean, this all sounds so trite, but culture became commercial. You actually had advertising executives who would request that certain kinds of content be broadcast on the Jack Benny program or on Ed Sullivan or whatever, so that it would complement their advertising in the most flattering and most effective way. And that has never happened where there were, committees of people who chose what the tastes were. It had always been much more democratic and organic before that. There was never a bunch of people trying to sell, cornmeal who pushed, Celtic dance music in the 1450s. It suited people and it became popular. And in Gershwin, he's commercial. They all are. All these people have to eat. Jimmy Rogers got to eat. George Gershwin's got to eat. So there's nothing wrong with that. But he's more bottom up market driven than what started to happen in the late 40s up through today. And we shouldn't let those commercial interests drive culture creation.
Well, I think mass, that media became mass is a problem. I was just
recorded music.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So thinking about in the good old days versus now. So if I pull up YouTube to listen to music, okay, which is probably a bad idea because you're going to get distracted by the visuals. You're going to search for music and you're going to have little screen grabs from these videos. Which ones are you going to go for? The quick and easy one, probably the one with the pretty girl in it. Are you going to dig 10 pages in to find something interesting? Probably not. So if you will have any hope of getting your music to get some play on a streaming platform, it's got to be to get a lot of plays. It can't be hard. It's got to be easy. Yeah. Whereas, 100 years ago, you come to my house and we've had dinner and now what are we going to do? Well, let's do some music. All right. Well, then I gotta pull up the sheet music and play something for you. And we can talk about it. And I think it's different. It's not eye candy or ear candy. It's, well, this song's really neat. Let me show you this one. Let's play it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you can necessarily go back, but there's a reason music is the way it is now.
Yeah. Well, how many Beatles songs start with the chorus? The needle drops on the record and it's chorus. Mm-hmm. There's no verse, there's no intro, there's no musical development. We're right to the hook.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you're
right,
right, Karl.
3 minutes.
You're right. We can't go back. But I think it would behoove us to understand that culture is now being fed to us from above and that we can reject it and we can seek out and create our own culture. And this is part of it. And the guy made a lot of money.
He sure did.
He made a lot of money. I was just reading here on the Infogalactic page about American in Paris. I'm just going to read straight out of this. Background. Gershwin was attracted by Maurice Ravel's unusual chords. After transatlantic letters back and forth as to whether Ravel took students and how much he charged, Ravel looked at Gershwin's prior year earnings and sent a telegram to Gershwin jokingly saying he should study with Gershwin, but he accepted him as a student. Gershwin went to Paris in 1926, blah, 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 blah. As a result of that, he wrote American Paris. Gershwin strongly encouraged Ravel to come to the United States for a tour, something Ravel had been reluctant to do. To this end, upon his return to New York, Gershwin joined the efforts of Ravel's friend Robert Schmidt, a pianist Ravel had met during the war, to urge Ravel to tour the United States. Schmidt was the head of an organization that promoted Franco-American musical relations. They were able to offer Ravel a $12,000 fee for the tour.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So, listen, how much is enough money? Like in 1926, if a bunch of guys can pass the hat, put 12 grand in a bucket, bait Ravel over here. Like, do we have to get 20,000 and sell a lot of cigarettes? Like, how much is enough? Like, clearly there's enough.
Yeah.
There's no willingness to niche down in popular art creation now, right? You want to create the beat, the whatever that has the most appeal, and Gershwin, even in 1928 when he was huge, that's a niche,
Yeah. Well, there's people that do it, but they're not going to be the top ones on YouTube or Spotify.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was about to say the only way to do that is to become an amateur.
Right.
In a sense, right? So like these metal bands we talked about that niche down into oblivion, subgenres upon subgenres, very, very, very few of them can even sustain a tour. And of those that do, it's a break-even affair for them. They could have a large following within their little subgenre, but it's not a career. It's not a means to feed your family.
Maybe that's actually, I mean, I hate that they're not making money, but maybe that's actually a good thing. To have your music done by autists, people who just really nerd out about a thing, and they're not caring if they make a great deal of money because they can't. They just can't, not with streaming music anymore. And you just have to go find them, but they'll never be the front page of YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. If the Mad Men sort of advertising executive committee selecting what songs and using payola to get certain songs played on FM radio in 1967 is not the best way to create culture or promote culture. YouTube algorithms are probably worse. But look to this old stuff. They haven't been able to put their heel on that yet. So look for that old stuff. And then flip over some rocks and look in those niches because there's just some good stuff there. Go find a Coulter Wall every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
A Wolfpack every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was listening to Turnpike Troubadours yesterday.
Yeah, weird niche.
Pretty cool lyrical content there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dig in. So for Gershwin, how many more hours are we going to go on this show? 11?
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, I'd say you can pull up song lists. Ella Fitzgerald's recordings are marvelous. She does a bunch of it, a bunch of Gershwin. She and Louis Armstrong have an album of excerpts from Porgy and Bess, which is fantastic. Porgy and Bess has some really good moments. I think as an opera, it's a little bit unapproachable.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into the best content of that, you might get that album.
Summertime, right? Is Porgy and Bess, right?
Yeah, I had a
some gems
Linda
in there.
Ronstadt Gershwin tune on our list. Everybody has sung this stuff. Tony Bennett. For the orchestral stuff, the big ones are Rhapsody in Blue, An American in Paris, Concerto in F. Am I missing one?
I don't know.
I think those are the big ones.
That's probably 45 minutes of music between those three.
Yeah, I wish there was more.
There's a lot of meat on the bone.
I wish he had written more, but those will get you started. Look for the piano rolls so you can hear him play. There is one that I've been able to find YouTube clip of him playing, so you can see this skinny guy sit down at the piano and make magic. Not too much because it was just too early. But the songs, gosh, if you're a singer or a musician at all, you can get like the Essential Gershwin and pluck out the chords and learn some of these songs. Won't be wasted time.
What's next? Copeland?
I don't know.
Well,
You've been flirting with Chuck Berry.
been flirting with Chuck Berry. I think it'd be fun. So you threw out, I believe, an idea like we got to do Nile Rodgers at some point.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, it would be really fun to do a funk show, talk about funk music.
Let's do it.
We've talked about the blues. At some point we got to do rock music, early rock music, rockabilly, funk, all sorts of fun stuff that happens in the 60s and 70s with, the more popular music side. But I don't know. Do we need any of that stuff? Do we need anything after 1959?
Do you need anything after 1937?
Well, I only
but
say
it's
50s,
there.
so we can get those beautiful Ella recordings on tape.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah, we can get Kind of Blue and Hank Williams if we go to 59.
Yeah.
Patsy Cline. It's important. I don't know. You want to do funk?
Go ahead and make the playlist.
Okay. All right.
can't
Yeah,
do
let's do
it.
it. Okay. Yeah, we'll do it. And this will be this will be fun. We'll kind
What
of
is
get
funk?
back to
Is funk the thing that you find in your armpit after
Yep.
a long day's work?
It's part of it.
well, I think we'll let James Brown and Barry White explain what the funk is to you.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll let the experts weigh in.
I will just shut the funk up.
And I have some
Yeah.
George Clinton
And wait.
stories.
And if you don't like it, get the funk out.
There you have it. See, I like this because, Karl gets his piano out and he thinks about music theory, and then, Trent actually gets his guitar out. He tries to pick apart some of these songs and, kind of digs in. And I'm just here to comment. So I have the least amount of homework of anybody. So that it pleases me.
This seems unfair.
I'm just supposed to land a fart joke or whatever every now and then, and do not only that, but that's another music and ideas show. So thanks for coming back after our little Christmas hiatus. We'll be putting another one out every other week. We'll keep that schedule up. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/music and join our little waiting list, or you can go to onlinegreatbooks.com/music, and I think you can sign up for one of our gateway sessions, a little free thing we do every month where you can come and read a good essay. Right now, the one we're doing is Lost of the Creature by Walker Percy, and then come to a free seminar and see how seminar is done. And if you like the way we do it, heck, maybe you could join us, or if you like the way we do it, maybe you can emulate it, start a home group, and talk about, anything that's important. You could do it with books. You could even do it with Gershwin or whatever. It's a good way to you actually create some culture that way, actually. Yeah, that's why people.
Let's be
that's why
our own merchants.
That's why we're not encouraged to do that.
We can be our own merchants of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, if you like the show, send it to somebody else and help us keep the lights on. We'll talk to you in 14 days.